welcome back to Christi's Couch. My name is Christi Lucasiak, and you are hanging out on my couch. It's pink, and it's cute, and it's velvet, and I really get stressed out when my family actually really sits on my couch because I'm like, that's really cute. It's like the only piece of furniture in my house that someone hasn't done something unfortunate to, so please don't mess up my pink couch. But anyway, so I hope that you are all having a fabulous week as we are heading into a holiday weekend. I hope that you have a short work week. That would be great, right? I know that Clara actually... Today's her last day of school until next Tuesday, so I'm sure she'll be skulking around the house being angry that she's bored. But look, then when we send her to school, she like hates life there too. So, you know, I guess the moral is when you're in sixth grade, you kind of don't like anything, right? I feel like that's the takeaway, correct? Okay, so yeah, it's Easter week. So for the last 2 weeks, I have literally been crushed with work. Like I'm on the verge of having a breakdown if I don't get like respite soon, because I just can't keep doing it. But I do it to myself. I really do. I overschedule myself and I keep telling myself like, oh, I'll be fine. And then when it comes time to actually do things, I'm like, I'm really freaking miserable. Like I need a break. And I'm fine to work an 8-hour day. It's the days that are like, okay, so I wake up around 7. I start working around 8-ish. So let's say 8 to midnight, 11 midnight. Okay, so that's 15, 16-hour days. Those would be the ones that kill me. So I am just like, I'm over it. I've been really busy since, like I said, the middle of last week. And today, well, I thought today was like my last busy day, but it turns out I have to film some things, like sponsored things tomorrow. So I'm going to take Friday and go. I'm getting my extensions back in, so I'll feel like a new version of myself. And then I don't know what else. I don't know where the day may end up taking me, but I know it's not going to be sitting at my desk and it's not going to be painful. I'm going to have a fabulous day on Friday. But to be totally fair, I probably will end up Easter shopping because I, for one, have not done one Easter thing yet. And whether or not we feel that the bunny exists, I feel the bunny exists for my kids. And I would very much like to still make sure that they had like lovely little Easter baskets. So I'm going to have an assignment on the Friday. What am I even talking about? I have no idea what I'm even talking about. It's just like one of those weeks. So it's yet to be determined if Chloe's even coming home this week because she laid this one on me last night. Oh, well, I haven't bought my plane ticket yet and they're really expensive. And my answer to that is, yeah, because you're trying to buy a plane ticket for like tomorrow. They are expensive if you wait until last minute. And I have been telling her to come home for like 3 weeks now. So we'll see how that goes. But I would really like for Chloe to come home. I would love to see her on Easter. But she said like, oh, all my friends are finally off and we can hang out. Right. But COVID is happening. So stop hanging around people. Okay. Anyway, I'm totally rambling. I really am. But what else is new in my life? Okay. So this is so freaking fun. As I've talked about before, I do Amazon Lives on Mondays around either 5 or 6 Eastern Standard Time. And then I also do them Saturdays around 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And basically, like, I just go on and I share some of my favorite finds. And it's a live experience. So, like, you can talk, you can chat. I'm actually broadcasting, like, for real live. And obviously, like, we're all Amazon shoppers. So I have this access to some really cool things that I share. And I had a guest do a live with me this past Monday. I had Britney Pent, who is actually my friend Diane Pent's daughter. And Diane was actually on Dance Moms. She's Brandon's mom. But anyway, so Britney is now like in her mid-20s. She just finished building a house. She's getting engaged, or she's getting married. She's recently engaged. And she came on and we just had the best time, like laughing and sharing things. So that was probably like my favorite experience. So next time we're doing an Amazon Live together, you guys should definitely hop on and watch. It's just really fun. I can't tell you how fun they are. And not just the ones I'm doing. Like, I love watching other people. So that's Mondays at 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I also did this past week. So the last Tuesday of every month now, between 6 and 9, Amazon is doing what they call Beauty Hall Live. And so they work with different creators and different brands. And while you are broadcasting, the brands that you're working with give special discount codes. So you can get really great beauty and makeup products at a discount that you normally never see. Plus, we all know Amazon prices are better. So I did Beauty Hall Live, and it was freaking so fun. I was talking about just some of my favorite products, and I was able to extend codes. So like, that was a really fun thing for me. So I loved doing that. But again, I'll link my Amazon store if you guys want to like follow it, because then when I go live, you'll get a notification if you want to jump over and join. But that's really fun. What else is happening in the world that is interesting to me? Okay. So we have to talk for a moment about Britney Spears. Okay, so on HBO, I think there's an episode, I can't remember what it was called, but there's a whole episode on HBO, like Max, and it was about, the scandal behind Britney and all of these theories and conspiracies about like her guardianship and if she's kind of being held captive against her own will, because her dad manages all of her money. And it went on to kind of explain how the court system is set up almost to, it really screws her. Like, she doesn't have access to things. And just the way it's set up, like, she has a really hard time getting out of the guardianship. And it's a total conflict of interest because he's supposedly like making choices for her mental health, but also running her money. But then he's being paid out of this estate. So it's a big like cluster. And in this documentary, it goes on to kind of like talk about that and some of the signals that have been sent out through her social media. And there's people who do literal deep dives on this and analyze it all. And she just posted something, I think today. And if you don't follow Britney on Instagram, first of all, you are missing out, because it is literally one of my favorite accounts. And not because I'm like mocking Britney, but she's just so like nutty in the most innocent and entertaining way. She like twirls and does fashion shows, and her hair is always kind of like askew, and she like shows us flip turns in the pool. And it's like, any way I would describe it would sound insulting, but it's almost like if a 4-year-old had an Instagram and they just made happy videos. But I don't think Britney is like a 4-year-old. She just has this childlike entertainment quality about her, if you will. So I think a lot of people at first are like mocking this, but I actually went on, every time I watch it, I kind of giggle and I laugh. And it could be easy to be like, she's crazy. But I think she literally is just like, screw the world. My life has been tough. This makes me happy. So I'm going to like have fun with it. But this week's post, it goes into this big caption, which Britney doesn't normally caption like this. And it's this huge kind of backlash against the documentary and how disappointed she was and how it showed her in a poor light. And I don't think she wrote it. I think somebody who runs her social media wrote it, because I feel like Britney tries to communicate with the world through social media, like almost like a little Morse code, SOS help. So go and look at Britney's Instagram, and I would love to hear your comments and thoughts on it, because I don't think she wrote it. And I think this is people just trying to like position this whole documentary as falsehoods, when I watched it, my takeaway is this poor effing girl. So very interesting. Love this whole thing, but I really hope that Britney gets out from under whatever this whole guardianship is and is able to take over her own life. Look, if she makes millions of dollars and pays everyone on her payroll, she should be able to decide whether or not she drives the In-N-Out burger. Okay? Like, that's all I'm saying. Standards, low, very low. But I mean, it's true. Okay, so that's my Britney rant. Okay, so we're going to take a brief pause, and we are going to talk about something that I think is super important, or at least it was something that definitely affected my life. So who remembers sex ed? We all do, right? So back in the day, we learned to prevent pregnancy at all costs. Anyone remember that banana demonstration? Okay, is it just me that's still traumatized? Because I really, truly am. But when it comes to planning for pregnancy, it's still a bit of a mystery, right? But it's time to take a new type of education that puts your reproductive goals front and center. So that's why Modern Fertility was created. It's an easy and affordable way to test your fertility hormones at home with just a simple finger prick. You mail it in with a prepaid label, and you'll get your personalized results within 10 days. Normal traditional testing with your doctor can cost over $1,000, but Modern Fertility only costs $159 to get the same information. And if you go to modernfertility.com/couch, you can get $20 off your test. And if you have HSA or FSA, you can use those dollars on Modern Fertility. So you'll get insight into how many eggs you have, hormone levels, and other important fertility factors. The results go deep into what every hormone means, and you can also talk one-on-one with a fertility nurse to review your results and options for a next step. So if you want kids today, or maybe one day in the future, you need information to make the decision that's right for you. So right now, Modern Fertility is offering our listeners $20 off the test when you go to modernfertility.com/couch. That means your test will cost $139 instead of hundreds or thousands that it would cost you at a doctor's office. So get $20 off your fertility test when you go to modernfertility.com/couch. modernfertility.com/couch. Loved Beauty Hall Live, loved working with Brittany Pent on my Amazon Live. Like, that's my exciting things to talk to you about this week. I have to make a bunny basket. I hope Chloe comes home. Is this a product or is this an indicator that COVID has really just started to take a toll? I feel like it could be. But, speaking of mental health and COVID, I think this week's guest is going to be someone that we can all absolutely take a lot away from, because we're talking specifically about mental wellness or mental health and just, the impact that this last year has had and just how we are all dealing with things. And so my guest this week, her name is Kati Morton. Kati Morton. And she's an author and a mental health expert, and she's actually wrote a book, and the book is called Are You Okay? A Guide to Caring for Your Mental Health, and that was released in 2018. But she also has a YouTube channel which has over 1 million subscribers and like 75 million views or something like that. So she's like an OG YouTuber, and it's really interesting because instead of like doing pranks and all of this craziness on YouTube, she puts out these videos that are actually super helpful as far as determining kind of maybe what you need for your mental health or where to begin. And it just gives you insight like how to begin that journey or what the difference is between a therapist versus a psychiatrist versus, a counselor. Things that I think we all have questions about and don't know really where to get the answers. You can definitely go to Kati's YouTube and start to just like poke around. But when I interviewed her, I obviously specifically wanted to ask questions about COVID and anxiety because I get those questions all the time from people. We're dealing with this unprecedented worldwide event and it's affecting everyone, which I don't think there's ever been anything that's affected everyone in the world before in history. In our history, like our lifetime. I'm sure there have been other things, but this is the only thing I can think of that has impacted the entire world. And so we had a really interesting conversation about just some ways that you can take care of yourself in this time. And yes, I do believe we are coming out of it. I think this is the beginning of the end. But I also think that we're still in it. And so I think we still have these moments where we're like, why am I feeling so crappy? And then we need a quick reminder of it's okay to feel that way. And maybe here are some things that you can do to help yourself feel better. So I love talking to Kati. We had some things in common, which you will find out. And I think that she's just such an amazing resource. And I was really, really excited to have her on the podcast. So let's get into it. Okay. Well, I am so excited to welcome Kati Morton. Welcome to Christi's Couch. I'm thrilled to have you here. How are you?
I am good. Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So you have such a fascinating background. So just to kind of give everybody just a little brief intro, you have a master's in clinical psychology and you are a marriage and family therapist in Santa Monica. Correct? Yes. Santa Monica.
Correct.
So, and we will definitely get into everything that you do online because that's where I think it's totally fascinating. And my listeners will absolutely be really intrigued by all of that. But before we do that, I have to say there is something that you have in common with my family. So, you are a graduate from Pepperdine.
Yes.
My daughter is a current sophomore at Pepperdine.
Oh, how cool. Oh
yes.
my God. What I wouldn't give to go back and do it again.
I feel like that's kind of the feeling. And I said to her, because my husband and I met in college and we went to a tiny school in probably the snowiest place in the United States. It's right on one of the Great Lakes and it was gray and ugly. And when we saw the Pepperdine campus, we're like, oh, how far they have come.
Right. I remember my friends that would always say like, oh, do you go to the beach and study? Do you spend all your time at the beach? And I was like, no, I paid a lot to go here. Like I study in the library. Like
right.
It's still school.
It is still school.
To the beach on the weekend.
Of course. Well, it was interesting because, so Chloe actually started school last year, but she took a semester off. And so she started in the spring. And when she started, she moved onto campus and, was having that great experience as a freshman, but then lockdown happened in March. So she only lived on campus for 6 weeks and now everything is virtual. So I keep saying, don't worry, you'll go back.
I know. I really, honestly, that's such a tough thing for young adults and kids is like missing out on stuff. One of my close friends, their oldest is a senior in high school. Aww. And he missed out on all of that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a bummer.
It's
really sad.
And that's what people look forward to. Like you have these expectations or these thoughts in your mind of what your senior year is going to look like or your freshman year in college. And then the world's been upside down, which clearly that is absolutely a topic I'm going to ask you a little bit about is COVID and quarantine and how everybody, just different things that I've heard and any suggestions you have for coping. But I do have to start with saying I am blown away by what you have done on social media with just your expertise and background. I think it's incredible. So
thanks.
You're welcome. Just to give everyone kind of a little bit of a background, and please, interject if I'm forgetting anything. I think one of the things that I was most fascinated by is you are one of the OG YouTubers and you're
yes.
not a YouTuber that's like, hey, I'm going to drive through this drive-through 800 times. You're on there giving people helpful, useful information about mental health, which couldn't be more needed. Couldn't be more needed.
It's funny, back when I started on YouTube, I think it was like 2011. I mean, first of all, it wasn't what it is now.
No.
Obviously. Like you couldn't monetize. You couldn't even create thumbnails until you had like a certain number of views or subscribers, I forget.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just a totally different, landscape, a totally different community and a much smaller creator community. And so anyway, I started just trying to educate people about, at the time it was eating disorders. That's my specialty is eating disorders and self-injury.
Interesting.
That's what I treat in my private practice mostly. And my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, was like, you should put that online. Like everybody should learn about what you're, treating and what you're doing and all of this stuff. And at the time I was like, isn't YouTube just like cat videos and,
kind of.
Charlie bit my finger. I don't know when that came out, but around that time. And he started sending me videos from people like Jenna Marbles and Anna Akana and being like, no, people do it. Like it's a thing. You should do it. It definitely wasn't what it is today. So that's why, I have almost, I think 1,400 videos or more. And definitely OG.
For sure. Well, that's really interesting. So I was looking around, and I love how you have everything categorized, and just, it's such a great resource. And I absolutely 1,000,000% will be, directing people there just as a place to get started, because I talk to young people, daily. I present to sororities all across the country, and mental health is clearly an issue that people are interested in and see the value in and the need for, which in my opinion, and you can totally, disagree or agree, I think that the whole concept of mental health is being embraced a lot more these days.
Oh, 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with the younger generation. I think they're all like, yeah, you need to be in therapy, which I think like people like me, who I'm in my mid-40s, like that was always a little stigmatized. And you're like, oh, I'm in therapy. I mean, I believe in therapy and I talk about it, but that wasn't the norm for people my age.
Our generation's very different. I mean, I'm 37, so I'm a little younger, but not much. And it was a very different conversation. The main reason I've been in and out of therapy since I was 15. And the main reason is actually my mom was a big fan of it because one of her friends had such a good experience. So I just happened to luck out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew any friends or anybody else growing up who was in therapy. When I was in therapy.
Yeah, because I would say, or I would guess back then, if somebody said, oh, I'm in therapy, everyone would immediately say like, oh, like what's wrong with you?
Yes.
It
what
wasn't.
Happened?
Yeah. What happened? Exactly. And so that's interesting that your mom supported it, because I come from like a totally different background where and I don't talk a lot about this just in public, but I mean, I have spoken about it. My family has a history of mental health struggles. And that was something that I had to learn on my own, like what's hereditary, what's chemical, like what did I inherit? What am I passing on? And to be very frank, I have been, and this is my own thing that I have to get past, but I've been a little bit hesitant to be as vocal about it as I could be, just because my background is reality, and I was clearly a very controversial person on reality television. So I almost don't want to give my haters that opportunity to be like, we knew you were nuts, like in a mean way. So
it's tricky being online and in the public spotlight in any way, because there are haters, and I don't think, it's not to say like, oh, people who aren't public facing don't understand, but I don't think people fully do understand what it's like to put yourself out there in that way, where people can take things honestly however they want to, and turn them into painful, hurtful words and harass you, and I totally understand that. I'd let yourself off a little easy, because it's not like it's you not wanting to talk about it. It's, I'm not ready to have people shout at me online about it, which is completely fair.
That is fair, because I do talk about it in a private, not a private, but they are still public settings, but not on a social media platform, because that's a little different. There's no filters, and it's just inviting everyone to judge you, even if your intentions are to have people to help. But that's a whole nother thing.
Totally.
Have you heard of Rothy's? If you haven't, let me change your world, because Rothy's is a company that makes both stylish and sustainable shoes and bags that are carefully crafted with eco-friendly materials like repurposed plastic water bottles and marine plastic. But it's the shoes that get me, because the shoes are so incredibly comfortable. They have a 0 break-in period because they're made seamlessly with a knit to shape design. So they are the perfect way that I can add style and comfort to my closet. So I have a pair of the lace-up sneakers, and I have them in the vanilla, which they're not like a pure white. They're more of like a creamy vanilla. And they're so cute because they have little accents on them, and they go so well with all of my, shall we say, loungewear that I've now taken to the street. But the shoes are cute and comfy. And Rothy's are available in a range of styles. So even if a sneaker is not for you, you. They have really cute flats that I've heard. There's one called The Point in black that has over 3,000 near perfect reviews, which clearly I'm going to need to try out for myself. But they have an ever-changing array of colors, prints, and patterns. And the shoes are knit with thread made from plastic water bottles. So they're actually ultra comfortable as soon as you slip them on. So that's right. There's actually no break-in period, which love that. And Rothy's has transformed over 75 million bottles into beautiful shoes, handbags, and face masks. Plus, they are fully machine washable. So if my tennies get dirty, I simply toss them in the washing machine and they come out looking as good as new. So if you want to check out all of the amazing shoes, bags, and masks available right now at rothys.com, go to rothys.com/couch. That's rothys.com, rothys.com/couch, and style and sustainability meet to create your new favorites. So head to rothys.com/couch today, and I want to know what you buy. Okay, so one thing I do want to talk about the YouTube channel is I love how you have your content organized, because I think one of the problems with mental health care is it's a little bit difficult to figure out how to get started.
Yes.
I wish as a whole society or the country or whoever, like the healthcare system, made it more accessible or, talked about how to go about finding it. But do you find that people struggle with that?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think one of the reasons for my first book, it came out a few years ago, called Are You Okay?, was we don't even know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When it comes to mental health, especially because it's been stigmatized for so long and still in some ways is continuing to be stigmatized, we don't even know where to start, right? Like, yep. I think people would all agree that, like, a lot of times when we have an issue, let's say I feel kind of achy and I'm extra tired, my first thought is I should call my doctor.
Sure.
Like my medical doctor. I should go in and get a checkup. Maybe I'm catching a cold.
Sure.
Right? I know as a mental health professional that those are usually indicators. Yes, they can be of a cold and you should get checked out by a doctor, but it could also be depression.
Yep. Right? I was just going to say, yeah, that sounds like depression to me.
Because it manifests that way. And I think a lot of times we don't even know what questions to ask. And not to mention, and this is no dig on our our medical field, because I think doctors are amazing. They save lives every day. But when you go in to see them with something like that, they maybe see you for 5-10 minutes, right? Just the nature of our healthcare, and they're in and out, and we can be worried or scared and not want to speak up and say, hey, could it be something else? And it can be really difficult. And so yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of people just don't even know where to start. We don't know what to ask. And that was the whole, honestly, it's been the goal of my YouTube channel since the beginning.
And I think you do a great job on it, especially that beginning, like start here. And it literally breaks down like what to expect on your first appointment. Like what are the different types of, whether they be a doctor or a therapist or a psychiatrist or what have you, but the different types of people you can speak to. So I think that is so incredibly helpful, and just educating people because they don't know. So I'm assuming that you just saw a need for that and you saw that people were confused and that's what inspired you, or was there something else?
I mean, yes, it was that, I know there's a need for it. Even personally, like I said, I've been in therapy. I always joke with people. I'm like, just because I know better doesn't mean I do better.
Sure.
Like becoming a therapist isn't like, my life is perfect.
Oh God, no.
Great. No, it's like not at all. But yes, there was a need. And I think it was really because I've been on YouTube for so long, I really have to give credit to my community on there, because when I started, like I said, it was eating disorder based. And so that was like, if you look at my first videos, I mean, please don't, they're super awkward and they're like a grillion years old. But I started out as that. And then they would ask questions about other things. Right.
Sure.
And it just grew from there. And so it's really them letting me know what they need help with, and that's kind of always been the guide to my content.
Yeah. And also they're seeing you as somebody they can trust, and they respect your answers and feel like there's value there, because I think that's also something, just being an online creator, you have to absolutely have. And I can't imagine just being a professional in something like mental health. You absolutely have to have that credibility and that trust with your audience for them to even like dig in and trust you and ask those questions.
Yeah, because it's such a sensitive topic for a lot of people.
Of course.
So you have to feel, even like we've been in therapy, right? So you know when you meet a therapist and you're like, ooh, that's not going to work. Or you meet one, you're like, I kind of like them. Okay. You know, I'm hoping to get more of the, they seem okay. I can talk to them feelings.
Sure. Well, I think that's something that I've heard from often, and I actually was guilty of this. The first time I went to therapist, I did not have the right therapist. But to me, I didn't like therapy. You know, I was like, oh, therapy's not for me. This is terrible. And, you know, and I had a really hard time ever going back to therapy. But it's true. Like once you realize that you have options and not everybody's going to be the right fit for you, then it seems to like you have to find somebody you're comfortable with. And I mean, any other tips that you can give people when they're looking for a therapist, like what they're looking for? I say comfort seems to me as a patient, that's what I want.
Yeah. And that's the first thing. It's really just feeling okay in their environment, right? Because as therapists, I know now a lot of things are virtual, but I believe things will return. But in my office, like it's set up in a way to help it feel what we as therapists call a holding environment, which sounds so woo-woo, but really what it is like, it's a place where you feel safe enough and okay. You know, it's like usually a comfy couch. Like I used to have, we got a new couch a few years back and my patients hated it because the old couch was it had like no oomph in it. So you just fall into it.
Right.
Which for my older patients, they were like, this is hard to get out of, you know, like,
right. But it's kind of like a hug.
Exactly. So a lot of my patients love that. So you should feel comfortable in that environment enough. I know therapy is uncomfortable, but it should be like, I don't mind coming here. This feels nice kind of thing.
Like a box of tissues by you. That's helpful.
Exactly. Yeah. Always. I'm such a crier in therapy.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Same.
Every time.
Same.
And so that's part of it. And then also they should challenge you. I know that people, you know, that it's uncomfortable and we don't always like it, but you don't go to therapy just to chat with a friend.
Right.
You know, you go to therapy to be like, for my therapist, for instance, she'd be like, Katie, you're doing that thing again. You know, you're people pleasing and it's just going to bite you in the ass later. And I'm like, stop calling me out, you know,
right.
But you kind of need that.
Right.
And
right.
So, and you should have some goals. You know, those are just some of the key things. And also I do want to add in too, they shouldn't talk about themselves. Therapy is magical because it's a one-way relationship, which feels weird, but trust me when I tell you it's super healthy and helpful in your therapeutic work.
Interesting. I mean, I guess that's interesting that you say that because I've never really sat and thought about that, but it's true. Like you do get to sit and talk about yourself for an hour, but that's interesting that they shouldn't talk about themselves because I've had a therapist who did talk about herself and her family a lot, and it was unnerving. Like I felt like I didn't feel like I had accomplished anything at the end of that session as much as I had like chatted with someone. Yeah.
Well, cause that's like you and I chatting as friends, right? We both share.
Right.
But that's like what I always call like the blind leading the blind, right? If you're like, man, I'm having these issues. I'm like, oh my God, me too. Then both of us are just like, what do we do with that information? And also in therapy, it's your time, right? You're actually paying someone to assist you. If I'm talking about myself, that's my therapy time.
Sure.
You know? And of course you're like, you didn't feel like you got as much out of it because you're like, it was a half therapy session. Probably.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So that's a really important point that I've never really thought about, but you're totally right. Is there an overarching like way or database or something like if somebody were saying, I guess I would just direct them to your YouTube because I'm sure that you explain like how to go about finding someone. But I do think that's a big question that people have. Like, how do I even start to find someone?
Oh, yeah. And if you call your insurance company or get online, you get like these huge lists.
Right.
And it's overwhelming. The best way, to be honest, which I think will happen more now than it used to back, let's say when we were kids, is word of mouth. Like both of my favorite therapists, well, one actually was through school. So if you were in school, if you're in college, and even in high school, I think a lot of high schools offer this, but in college specifically, especially at Pepperdine, therapy was free for me for like all the years. And I went every week, like religiously.
Interesting.
And it was amazing, especially because at the time my dad was getting really sick and I knew he was going to die and he ended up passing away, but it was like, I needed that support. Sure. So look into that. But when it comes to, you know, outside of school, asking your friends, if someone's telling you that they're in therapy and it's really helpful, be like, who do you see? I've been looking for someone, you know? And then honestly, I always tell people, if you have nobody in your life that's going or wants to talk about it, any therapist is going to have some kind of website.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're not web designers, but therapists pay to have them created. And usually because we don't, make a ton of money, we do all of the writing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So get on the website and see what it looks like. What do they say? How is it verbalized? Do you like how they're talking about things? There's usually a photo of them. Do they seem okay to you?
Right.
I know that seems very superficial, but you'd be surprised what we can glean from just the websites. And then when you call and if you talk to them, know that you can make one appointment and you don't have to make another.
Okay.
Like, trust your gut. If you're like, ooh, I don't feel comfortable. Also, like, I'm in LA. So I'm like, traffic was terrible. There's nowhere to park. I'm stressed out by the time I get to their office. Like, that's just not going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, think of those things. And I talk about this in my book that came out a few years ago, is like, this is not the time to be politically correct. I don't care. Do you want an old lady? Do you want a man? Do you
Mm-hmm.
want somebody who's the same, is LGBTQ plus, like, positive? What's important to you?
Right.
I don't, and so for me, if I'm honest, like, it needs to be a lady that's older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I like them to be kind of hippy dippy. I don't know why. I just do.
Right. It works.
Yes. And I need them to be in Santa Monica, because for me to go east of 405 is just like asking too much.
Oh, yes. LA. Even though, like, I live in Pittsburgh, but I've had an apartment there for many years, like traveling
Mm-hmm.
back and forth. Oh, LA. Yeah.
The traffic's so bad.
It's soul sucking. The traffic is soul sucking in LA. Like, I literally leave there and I'm like, ugh. Like, I cannot tell you, and you know this, like, how many times I've gotten out of the car with a headache and just been like stressed and just been like, I would much rather never leave my apartment than drive around, especially, there's like a 2-hour window that you can drive in LA and it's like 3 a.m. You're safe.
Yeah, if you leave like an event really late and you have to get on the 405, you're like, wow, nobody's here. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. It's a lot. I mean, that's a huge factor to consider living there, but that's a different conversation. For sure. So obviously this last year has been, I'm assuming for you, a busy time, even though things are virtual. I feel like people are struggling in this last year more than ever before, just because we're in this very odd time. And it's not just an odd time for us in the United States. Like, I've never known anything to affect the entire world, like COVID. And what have you seen as far as what patients have needed, or what you're seeing or hearing from friends as a mental health professional?
Yeah, there's been a lot going on this year. The first thing actually that makes this, just like to your point, I've never seen anything, that's worldwide affecting everybody. That in and of itself, the fact that I'm just as affected. I mean, obviously we all have different levels of impact depending on our job, depending on all sorts of things. But I've never had situations where I'm just as impacted as my patients.
Yes.
So that's a very different dynamic. It's opened up the door. Like I was saying, therapists shouldn't share that much about themselves. This has been a strange time for more sharing than I normally would, because it's a shared experience.
Right.
And I think there is something healing in like sharing in pain and upset. So to that end, I've seen, even personally, but also in my patients and online, increased levels of anxiety.
Of course. I was going to ask, and anxiety is obviously a trigger word for everyone. Everyone has anxiety, but go on.
Yeah, but it's, we've been feeling it. And I mean, not to get too nerdy, but in our brain, when we're threatened, right? I think we could all agree COVID was threatening in some ways. Am I going to get it? If I get it, am I going to die? Is my business going to survive? I mean, there's so many. Am I going to keep my job? All sorts of questions that are threatening to our well-being. When we're threatened, our stress response is activated in our brain, which is our, like, not to get too into it, but it's like our limbic system, which gets our amygdala going. And our amygdala is what I call like our fire alarm. Like when a toddler is throwing a tantrum, their amygdala is firing. It's like, oh, wow, 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 and that means that our prefrontal cortex is offline, which is where all of our critical thinking happens. So we are kind of in this fight, flight, freeze type of response. And we're being held in it, right? This is supposed to be a short-lived thing. Like, oh, I'm scared. There's a guy walking in the alley. I run and get my car, lock the doors. Oh, I'm okay. Right. But if this is held for a long time, people start to feel super irritable.
Mm-hmm.
We start to feel super anxious for no reason, hypervigilant, right?
Mm-hmm.
We hear something and we jump. And then depression, if it's
Mm-hmm.
not treated, And so that's really what I've been seeing. And then my patients who have a history of trauma, so people who've been traumatized in one way or another, though the triggers are just so intense right now. And the flashbacks have been coming back with more, more frequency and all of those things. So I think the majority of people are feeling more anxious and maybe more depressed. And then, anybody with trauma, it's just been like heightened.
That makes absolute sense. And I mean, I can see everything you said. I could see bits and pieces of that throughout the four of us in my family and just different things that people were experiencing at different times. So it's like we've all gone through this and experienced a lot of the same. I feel like a lot of us have had, I can say that I've had maybe not the trauma part of it so much, but I've definitely had the anxiety and the depression. And even my 11-year-old who has a sunny disposition has really, like, we've had to take her to therapy because she's really struggling with depression. And the therapist said, this is not unusual. We've seen a lot of kids, like the world is upside down. And we obviously live in a place that's very gray. Throughout most of the year. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of like even light therapy that we were helping, like trying to work with just to give her a little bit more, I don't know, relief.
And kids are used to being out and interacting with each other too,
exactly.
Right? And all that was taken away. And I can't imagine, like I was I was a sports kid. Like I was in soccer and softball and basketball for a while. And then, you do all sorts of things, and to not have that and to not be able to interact with your peers as a child is really hard. And also something that I think we've all, like, just for acknowledging everybody feeling upset, is like, we've been grieving for a year. Like whether it's the loss of that vacation you wanted to take, or that wedding that you planned, or that big birthday celebration, or, maybe your business was finally growing and you were excited about this year. Like there's so many things to grieve. We talk about grief when it comes to death and dying, but I honestly believe we grieve all the time for the loss of things that we had hoped for,
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
and that's what's made it hard.
I was going to say, I've never thought about grief other than death and dying, but when you said that, I mean, I can think about, I'm sure people who've planned big weddings, after the wedding's over, you have that grief of like, that post-wedding, like, oh, I don't have this to look forward to, or, a vacation, maybe like, oh, now I have a whole year to wait, or whatever. I mean, those are very real emotions that people go through. And I think it's always like, well, what's wrong with you? Just shake it off. And I hate that more than anything when somebody's like, snap out of it. I'm like, okay, listen. Like,
if it was easy, I already would have done it.
Exactly.
So.
That makes me, oh God, that's like that's a trigger for me. I'm like, please stop talking. Like, please, I hate like smile. Oh, please.
I know. Oh God.
Yeah, I hate it.
Shut up.
I know.
Not helpful.
I know. Well, anxiety seems to be, I don't know if it's just because it's become like more of a, like a trendy term. I hate to say it like that, but anxiety is something that everyone throws around. Like, I have anxiety. Or if you like something clean, everyone's like, oh, you have OCD. Like, I think people throw around those terms, but I do think that there is a lot of anxiety happening clearly. Do you have any like quick tips to even help people kind of just regulate themselves if they're feeling anxious, or anything at all that you can offer to people just listening that's quick? I don't want to like, abuse your knowledge, but I think that's a helpful thing that most people would say, like, what's one thing?
Oh, totally. And I think we all need those things. And I have a few. So the first is, and this is going to sound really crazy, but give it a try. Trust me, it works. Shake your body out. Like a weirdo, like crazy dancing, like from your toes to the top of your head. I want you to just like shake everything. And I know that sounds really weird, but think of like a dog coming out of the bath or something, or out of the pool. When we shake, we actually release that anxious energy that's like cycling in our body. So remember, I was talking about being put into our stress response. And so our amygdala is firing, and it's sending all of these hormones and chemicals, like adrenaline, for instance, cortisol, things that get our body activated so that we can run away or fight. But we can't do that right now, right? We're feeling overwhelmed. We're not moving. There's no movement to do. So we're frozen. And that freeze state is what we believe long-term leads to symptoms of trauma and PTSD, or anxiety and panic attacks. And so getting that energy out of your body, it's like, again, you're going to feel kind of crazy doing it, but trust me when I tell you, and also you get out of breath. Don't think you're out of shape or anything. It's just like a lot of movement at once.
Okay.
But if you really just shake it out, you'll feel better. So if you start, like I even tell my patients, if you wake up in the middle of the night or you struggle to go to sleep, I want you to do a full body shake. Get up, shake it out.
That's a good idea. I've always heard like I think this is if you're like, I guess ruminating or like your brain's whatever. I've always heard like you're supposed to submerge your face in ice water, which isn't what I want to do in the middle of the night. I think that might be a very specific thing.
I mean, if it works for you, no hate or anything, no judgments. But yeah, it seems a little shocking. It might be hard to go back to sleep after that for a little while.
I wouldn't like that. But the shaking makes sense.
Yeah, so shaking it out, even relaxing your jaw and your tongue in your mouth, which sounds really weird, but it tells again, we're talking about our nervous system, which it's like all these things that we do, like keeping our shoulders really tight and pushed up towards our ears. All of those things kind of signal to our body, we're not safe. This isn't okay. Mm-hmm. We have a right to feel anxious or upset, right? So even just relaxing your jaw sometimes and like moving it around and relaxing your tongue in your mouth, those can be helpful things within that same kind of vein. But then there's also something that really helps me is thought stopping. And it's a little tricky and it's like a new muscle, right? It's like the first thing you do Pilates, you're like, I did not know that muscle existed. Why? Why does this hurt so bad?
Exactly. Like that's such a little movement. That'll be fine. And then you do it, you're like, right? Oh no.
Yeah, you're like, I don't move like that. My leg does not do that. So think of it like that. It's new. It's your first Pilates class. But when you have those thoughts, right, we all know those worry thoughts that spin out of control where all of a sudden we're like, why am I thinking about what I said when I was 21?
Right.
That doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
Can't go back and change it. Welcome to anxiety, right? But when those thoughts are running through your head, in your head, or even out loud, if you're by yourself, you can say like, stop, 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 stop. And if you say stop enough, trust me, our brain can't do two things at once. It will slowly stop doing, it will slow down the crazy. And then I want you to tell me, like you're telling someone a story about all your senses of your favorite memory. So is that a good vacation that you took? Is it a vacation you hope to take? If we don't have a good memory, we can create one. Mm-hmm. That's fine too. Or maybe it was like just that nice day you went walking around town or where everything just happened to work out great. It could be anything. Something good. It has to be emotionally tied. That is a good emotion, something like excitement, relaxation, pick something that feels good and then tell me about it from start to finish. And I'm telling you, 5 minutes in from doing this, you've forgotten about the worry, whatever that thought train was. You got off the train.
Yeah. I love that. So I'm definitely going to be doing that with my younger daughter. I think that's amazing. Like I never thought about that. I know I've heard like the 5, like focus on 5 sounds, focus on 5 things, but to actually like have to think back and put yourself in a great place. I think that's a really good tip. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. It's one I use personally because I'm definitely more on the anxious side of things. And sometimes those anxious worry thoughts will keep me up. I can't fall asleep. And so if you do that, then you kind of end up having a nice dream too, most likely, because you've remembered a good time or a fun memory of something. And so it kind of puts you in a better headspace. And then I guess the last one I would have for people is to recognize when you're having thoughts that aren't helpful. And if you can't do something to, like sometimes it helps to even talk it out. You can be like, oh, I'm thinking about that thing. And you can bring it up with like your partner or your friend or, whoever. But if we can't talk about it, it's okay to distract. So I'm always telling people you can go for a walk. You can color. You can finally organize that cabinet that you've been wanting to have been putting off. Whatever helps you feel better or distracts you. You can take a shower. You can pet a dog. You can do whatever. I mean, there's any number of things that you can do. Distraction is okay because sometimes it's just putting a little space in between, again, kind of like the racing train of thoughts. If we just get off for a second, sit to the side, sometimes we forget that train was there altogether and we can like go on. Mm-hmm. So it is okay to like do something else as long as it's not harmful for you,
Right.
Like shopping or drinking or alcohol, drugs or anything.
Because I was going to say, I feel like that's where people go. They're like, I'm going to have a glass of wine and go on Amazon.
Exactly.
Yeah, those are two that you just said no to. So my system doesn't work. Okay. Great. Fabulous. Good to know. I think that's so helpful. So thank you so much for sharing that because I do know that I have a lot of, I think that's helpful no matter what stage of life you're in, like we've all experienced, like you said, the exact same things in the last year. So it's been a really interesting journey, but I feel like we're kind of at the beginning of the end. So hopefully things will start getting back to whatever the new normal is. I think the normal is going to be different, but it will be more normal than we've seen.
Agreed. And I think getting out of this stuck at home kind of thing. I know they're like, don't stay stuck at home, stay safe at home. I'm like, we feel how we feel.
Right.
So we feel stuck.
Right. Right.
And that's just overwhelming, and I think if things can open up more so that we can go do the things that felt good to us in the past. Like the one thing a lot of my patients specifically been struggling with is like their lack of coping skills because they were taken away, it was always good for me to go to a yoga class or a spin class or some kind of, exercise, the gym. You can't do that. Okay. Well, then I used to go out to dinner with my girlfriends and like vent about my week, and that helped me just kind of decompress. Okay. We can't do that.
Right.
And so it was like, it's really hard. And then for a while, even like playgrounds in our area have been closed. They're open now, but they were closed forever. And it's like, if you got to take your kids there and sit out with other parents and lament about the difficulties of parenthood, you can't do that. And so I think it is good that we'll have those things back because we need them.
Yeah.
It's just part of being a human.
Sure.
We
my
need
God.
it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. Yeah. I miss interacting with people. I got to the point now where I did like a polar opposite where, everyone was just wearing sweats. I dress up and sit in my house because I'm like, I miss my pretty clothes. It just made me feel better.
Totally. Dressing up does change your mood.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to dress up today. Like now I don't sit around and wear like tight jeans or anything crazy, but just looking a little nicer put me in a better headspace. So,
and dresses are very forgiving. I wore dresses a lot at the beginning.
I have a dress on right now because I've had a few I've eaten a lot of cookies since Christmas. So I'm like, I'm just going to wear this little dress.
Fair.
For sure. Okay. Well, I have a lot of listeners who are young adults. And one of the things I like to ask my guests, because I think it's sort of fun, is because we all kind of relate to, making mistakes as young adults. So one of my favorite questions that everyone likes is, what was the biggest mistake or biggest screw up you made, like as a young adult?
Oh God, there's so many.
I know, isn't it? It's like hard to pick.
I have to say probably the one that affected me the most, it doesn't anymore, thank God, but for a long time, it was like the people that I chose to date.
Oh,
so
yes.
I went through it was weird. It's kind of, my therapist and I for a while would like laugh about it because what else are you supposed to do? But I went through this phase where I would date these people who were either completely unavailable. So like fun for me, get to keep chasing it. I don't know. I like the chase.
Sure.
Question mark. I'm not sure. Super unhealthy. But I would always be the one that was like the most invested, and it was just got to be really unhealthy. And I would stay in relationships for years. Like, I don't even know.
Well, because you're like, I will change them. They will love me. Yeah.
I'm the only one that gets them.
Yep.
Right. Thinking that you're the only one that, just anybody out there, if you're doing that, do yourself a favor and just dump them and move on because it's bad and it just never ends good.
Yeah.
And so getting out of those relationships is probably the best thing for me.
Good.
Honestly, that's probably the biggest. Although, I make mistakes all the time.
Well, sure. We all do. But there's always something you look back on and you're like, oh God, like I needed to go back and have a talk with myself in the 90s. Like, don't do that.
Totally. Also don't cut your own bangs. I did that. That wasn't good either.
Okay. So wait, my 11-year-old has cut her own bangs twice since quarantine has started. I'm like,
I'm sure.
If you cut your bangs again, well, she didn't have bangs. And so she went,
cut them new.
Cut them new. Mm-hmm. Oh yes. That was an interesting, because that's like, there's very few things that I find more egregious than like cutting your own hair. And I'm like, oh my God. And my older daughter was like losing her mind because she knows how I feel about that. Because honestly, it goes back to something that happened in my childhood. Like I had a haircutting salon one day with me and my best friend, and we both ended up like nearly bald. So it's like a very big trigger for me. And
I did that with my best friend too. We cut bangs.
Oh yeah.
And we cut them out of nothing. And we did way too much bang, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yes. See, I don't know. The haircutting thing is a trigger for me. So,
yep, fair.
Yeah. The bangs. I got that. Okay. So then the last thing I'm going to say before I give you that, then I can tell everyone where to find you. But what advice what is one thing you wish you could go back and tell your younger self?
Honestly, I would want to tell her, not everyone has to like you, and that's okay.
I love that.
Forever. I mean, that's been the thing that I worked on therapy for years, even as an adult, which sounds, I know people think it's like a childhood thing, but people pleasing is just terrible and exhausting. And for years, I would just, even relationships, like friendships that weren't serving me or them.
Yep.
I would like fight for it. Like, oh, I need them to like me. And like, I don't want to fight. And I'm, so adverse to conflict, and which, asserting what you need is not conflict, by the way. It took me a long time to learn that too. And I think that if I could have heard that at, the younger the better, but I don't think I would have listened to myself. Maybe 20, well, maybe 21, Katie could remember. And
sure.
Like, thanks, Katie from the future. I'm sure that will save me a lot of pain.
No, but that's a really good one. That really is a good one. And I honestly, I think I've gone through that lesson and I realized that. And people pleasing is a thing. And believe me, I forget all the fights I had on television. In my real everyday life, I will go out of my way to avoid conflict in any way, shape, or form. I don't like it. No one likes it, but I will literally crawl in a hole before I will have a conflict with another person. I hate it.
Yeah, same. But sometimes it's okay to say, that hurt my feelings. Can you please not talk to me that way?
Yeah.
But as someone who's so conflict averse, that seems like such an overstep. You're like, oh my God.
I can't say that.
Totally. They're going to get mad and then it's going to be horrible. And then I'm going to black out. I won't even remember what happened. I'm so stressed out. It's so bad.
Oh, I feel that in my heart. All right, Katie. Well, thank you so much for all of your insight and all of your help. I think it was really, really great to hear from you. So please tell everyone, I'm absolutely going to pick up a copy of your book. So it's Are You Okay? A Guide to, what is it? Caring for Your Mental Health. Is that the correct title? Yes.
That's it. And I have a new one coming out this September called Traumatized.
Oh, I love that.
Ironically enough, we put together the idea and sold the book before COVID, but we had to make some changes, obviously, because COVID. But yeah, everybody can find me online at all of my socials, even my YouTube channel. Everything is just Kati Morton, and that's KatiMorton. And if you prefer podcast form, I have a podcast, Ask Katie Anything, where I just answer people's questions each and every week on Thursdays.
Love that. Okay, I will make sure that I link everything in the show notes for you guys. And thank you again so much for being a guest.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
I am absolutely certain that there are some really valuable tips that you can take away from that and apply to your daily life that can help you. So I love that episode gave us all tools that we can use, and it's coming from somebody who is obviously a professional, and it's just, these are good reminders that we are all in this together. And I am going to link Katie's YouTube and her Instagram in the show notes, as well as her podcast, but definitely make sure, if this was interesting to you, grab her book, Are You Okay? A Guide to Your Mental Health. I think that there's obviously a plethora of information there as well. And, normally at this point, I would go into answering questions that readers have sent in. But honestly, I don't feel like that's appropriate. I feel like we all got something out of this episode that we can all use. And let's all just take a moment to maybe put some of these thoughts and ideas into practice this week and come back next week feeling very zen and very much in a better headspace. So I would love one more time to just ask all of you, if you are enjoying this podcast, please jump into the iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and give it a quick 5-star review. If you want to leave a quick 5-star rating, it's literally like one click. If you want to leave a review and write something out, I read them all. I love them. But even just that quick click of the 5 stars definitely helps me in the rankings so people can find this podcast. And I would love to keep doing it because it's something that I feel I don't know. I feel like it's so fun for me. And in order for me to be able to, keep bringing you all of this amazing content free and speaking to all of these people, just those ratings and reviews help me a lot. So that's about it for me this week. I hope that you have a fabulous week, and I will see you back here on the couch next week. And don't do anything that I wouldn't do. Bye.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.